This is SoulCharge, the podcast for women leaders to take the highest level of ownership of their power to create results now. I'm your host, Stacy B. Let's dive in. Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome back. This episode is really packed with the practical and mystical. Today, we are diving into control and truly how these little nuances of control are in the way of you and your next level and breakthrough. One of the things that I love so much about the SoulCharge work and this work that I have the opportunity to do with these powerful women leaders is how universal the things are we are all experiencing. And so when I have multiple clients going through something, I love to break it down and really get to, of course, the root of what's going on, to bring it back to the podcast and articulate it in a way that you can listen to this and then walk away with a plan of action and really be able to not just be in the action, but have the awareness of what's truly going on in your psyche that you keep doing these things. And so I'll set the table for you a little bit before we dive in today. And that table is around this conversation I was having with a client in regards to her current company and team. And so I'll set the stage with this woman has multiple companies. And one of the things that she's experiencing in her companies is seeing that she's the top salesperson, seeing that she is the top performer, and experiencing frustration and resentment in getting that support from her team members, specifically as it relates to revenue generating activities. And I want to just pause right here as you listen and shine a light on where in your life might this be showing up for you, whether it is in your team, whether it is in support at home, whether it is in support in general, but specifically bring your attention to, do you notice that you accept support in certain areas, but not necessarily around the things that generate money in your business? And the reason that I want to pause here and put a mark on this, put a stake on this topic, is because it specifically shows up for us as women differently when control is running the show versus trust as it relates to these revenue generating things. You may be able to easily delegate that executive assistant role, that administrative assistant role, those operational activities because you hate them. And you probably maybe are not good at those. But when it comes to the thing that you're brilliant at and also the thing that you rely on to bring the business forward, that is where I want to shine a light on the control today, because this is not a new conversation around how we're a bunch of control freaks running these businesses and that delegation is hard and that receiving support as women is different than a man hiring an executive assistant. That's not the conversation I want to have. The conversation I want to have is, where are these things showing up and why, and how you're responsible for them? Because the moment that you can see how you're creating this, again, the moment you take your power back and you can make a new choice. So this particular woman that I was speaking with experienced this in her businesses, where she constantly is experiencing going to the sales meeting, going to the accountability check-in meeting with her team, and being the one, and sometimes the only one, that had sales to report on. Going to these meetings and being the one that reported on productivity or those metrics that move the business forward, and people showing up week after week, not reporting on the same activities that generate the business or matter most to the business. And week after week, her allowing this to happen, her allowing these meetings to take place and to take on more and more. And we were having a call with her recently, and the conversation took an interesting turn because I was on the call with one of my team members. And what we were discussing was this activity and behavior that we do as leaders, which is we think that by telling the team how much we're doing, that's going to be an inspiration, that's going to be the thing that gets them out of bed and gets their juices flowing and makes them want to produce more. And it's actually the opposite. The opposite is what needs to take place. But what I see a lot of times in women leaders, more often than men, is that there is a worthiness epidemic that's driving why we're still reporting to our teams. And that's actually what needs to end. So, takeaway number 2 from this podcast is if you have a team or an organization where you are reporting to your team, that needs to end. You need to stop reporting and start leading them in a way that they don't necessarily feel like, oh, she's got it, so I'm going to take my foot off the pedal. And that's just what we do when we report. And so this particular client was sharing with her team week after week her activities and what was going on as if she was a part of the team. And I think that comes from a well-intentioned place. I've done that before too, where you're trying to get the troops rallied around an initiative, and you sharing is also inspiring and getting their juices flowing. But here's what was interesting, and this was a live share coming from one of my team members. So in our personal experience, one thing that we are making some shifts around internally is around our liberation event. So many of you know our Liberation event is our monthly pop-up offering that we offer, and it's now happening across the West Coast. So in Northwest, right? We have our location in Boise. Orange County happened in April and will continue to happen. And Sedona is kicking off next. And obviously, running all of those pop-ups by Stacy, by myself, is not something that's in the business plan, right? And so we were having this conversation around who was leading the pop-ups, how that's going to look, and delegating that ownership around those pop-ups and what goes into that. And in that dynamic that shifted within our internal team of going from Stacy leading the pop-ups to now the team taking over the different pop-ups in the different areas that we're launching them, what that did was ignited a different level of ownership within my team, because it wasn't, I am sitting back and watching anymore. It was, oh, I am actively moving this forward. I'm no longer sitting on the sidelines of this game that I'm in. I'm actually the quarterback here. And so that dynamic is happening with us internally. And we were able to share that with this particular client and share with her that this interesting dynamic happens when we're in control as leaders. When we're carrying, whether it's production, whether it's sales revenue, whether it's whatever it is for you in your company and in your life, but when we are carrying the burden of it all, what happens is that people can very easily, not even knowing it, go into more of a passive supporting role that sounds like, if Stacy asks me to do something, I'll do it, but I'm not necessarily going to initiate that myself. And that's the shift, first and foremost, that I want you to look at your life and really inquire about. Is there anywhere where I'm still acting like the hero? Is there anywhere that I'm taking on this level of control for whatever reason? I frankly don't really care why you're doing it. I just care that you stop doing that and that you actually go into true regal ownership of what's going to move the needle to achieve the goal that you have, versus being in this loop with control. Because a lot of times control masks itself as excellence, right? Control masks itself as fantastic customer service. But actually, when we are in control and not true leveraging ownership through our team members and through the people that support us, what happens is it becomes the thing that is the bottleneck to it all. But it's such a mask and it's so confusing because you're such high performers. We're all such high performers that it comes across as, not only do you have to trust these people, but you actually have to trust them around a topic that you have used to make yourself feel safe, make yourself feel worthy, and build all the barricades around your heart, quite frankly, which is money. And that's why within organizations, the owner and the leader getting out of business development and being the highest performer of revenue is the thing that I see bottlenecked the most. And so you may be able to relate to this within your own company or within the organization that you are a part of, which is, where am I taking on too much as it relates to generating money or income because I haven't delegated that before, or I haven't seen that be successful through someone else? And if that's true, I want to encourage you today. How can you take a step to leverage revenue generating activities, things that are generating the next level of business and business development for your company? How can you leverage that through someone else immediately and let them win without you still being involved, without you still reporting on the metrics, because that makes you still feel really good and feel involved? How can you start to take the step to leverage that and turn that over? The SoulCharge Liberation event is designed to do just that. It is designed to liberate you from what is keeping you stuck, to free your energy so that you can be free once and for all, so that you can be free for good, and leave with practical tips and strategies to harness the energy that you liberate through our event and go and make results immediately. The women that attend our liberation event come in for goals. They come in to learn how they can start ascending their next level, and they leave changed. They leave inspired, they leave clear, and they leave with clear next steps on what is next. And a lot of times it's unexpected. A lot of times with the liberation event, you think you're coming for one thing and you leave actually getting to the root of what's been going on all along. In just 2 hours, we clear what is in the way. We help you get clarity and how to create a path forward to elevate your life and business. So join us. You will not be sorry that you attend the liberation event, because it is the first step on your journey to free yourself, to swing for the fences on your vision, to free yourself from the binds and shackles that are keeping you stuck. It's to free yourself to create anything that you want, because that's the truth. You can create anything, and it's time to start now. What's interesting about this as it relates to women, money, and control within the business is quite often what I see is that there's these elements going on where we have to trust ourselves, right? And in trusting ourselves, we go and hire the support. But if we're truly honest, we're not leveraging to the capacity and to the levels that the support can often support us in. We're still doing parts and pieces of everyone's job and our own. And yes, it's about trusting ourselves and trusting others, but it really comes down to the thing in which you are trying to get to delegate and leverage upon. That piece, for many of us, when it comes to these revenue generating activities, is the piece that can be the thing that we still have our fingers in, that we're still trying to control. And so how can you take a step to release that today? The first thing is to ask yourself if you're currently doing this, right? And the way that this shows up again is, are you the top producer? Are you the one that is bringing in all of the revenue? Do you find yourself doing a really good job in leveraging and hiring through like operational type roles? But when it relates to sales and revenue driving roles, that those aren't the roles that you pursue first. So that's the first question. And then the second question is to stop reporting to the team. Stop treating yourself and acting like you are a member of the team. And this is not from a like hierarchical ego type perspective. This is, you are the leader. And a lot of you may not be perceiving yourself and your vision as enough. And so you go into and try to control all of these different things, all of these different people and these different roles, instead of being in your queendom, instead of being on your throne and it's time to get back on the throne. That is the message here. And, it's so interesting because we want to be helpful. We want to be nurturing. We want to give everyone that feeling that comes into our organizations that they're safe and we got this, and encourage them and help them achieve their goals. But alongside that, what tends to happen over time is we see week after week goals not being hit, metrics not being hit, and we're still continuing, right? We're still pursuing, we're still pouring into everyone, we're still doing all of these things. And it's time to receive that back. It's time to set that standard of, it's not just about this beautiful vision and creating this workplace that's amazing for people to come and achieve their personal and professional goals, but it's also about you standing by what the vision is and receiving the support, whether it is revenue or operational support, to fulfill the vision that you have, and to really make sure that you're not coming from that place of control any longer, but to really ask yourself, are these things showing up for you? So I gave you one practical tool. Another thing to really audit for yourself is your yes. Your yeses are ways in which you affirm that you're wanting to still continue to be in control, or they affirm your next level of leadership and stepping into who you need to be energetically, emotionally, physically, for you first and the business. And so auditing your yeses, what are you saying yes to? If you look at your calendar from last week, do the yeses and the commitments that you've made support being in your leadership, or is it being a doer, a taskmaster in the business because the people that you've hired aren't performing or are performing, half-assed? Are your yeses representative of where you want to go, of time to think? Are they representative of who you want to be and your future self now? Because that's what we need to start being mindful of, instead of getting to all the meetings and doing all of the things. What do your yeses represent? Going back to the woman that I was talking about, I think it's so interesting because so often we want to make sure everything is just so or just right, and we want to make sure people feel, I think, a sense of, it's really safety, right? It's all safety at the end of the day, but it's like, it's this sense of like really wanting to make sure they're equipped to do the job that they've been hired to do. And I think that in that desire that they feel equipped and ready, what happens is we hold the ball too long. And we don't pass the ball off soon enough so that they can trip, fall, and think on their own. I think that this is very common, right? It's like we have that mothering, that nurturing aspect in all of us. And I think that really comes out in the business as it relates to delegation, as it relates to, I have this role that I want to give someone ownership of, and all I know is how to control the outcome. All I know is how to succeed and get results. And so this next chapter for you might be, how do I start thinking about this role differently and thinking about what are the things that I can put together and initiate with this particular person that's taking over the role, so that they can do the thinking, so that they can own the role in a different way that allows them to not just be the taskmaster, but to actually take the ownership of that role and to take over that completely, take over the thinking about it, take over the energy about it, and also what success looks like about that particular role. Because it's interesting, what I see a lot is like, you have this role that you've hired for, and then the conversion or the transference of the responsibilities doesn't totally happen, but the expectations are there, right? The expectations on the person and on the role that they generate those results is there. But the truth is that your control about it is also still there. And those two cannot live in synergy. You can't be empowering someone and controlling them in the same breath. That's just doesn't work. And so when you're thinking about, control and blocking this breakthrough for your growth and the company, here's an idea or a different way of thinking about it. So, different way to think about it is, in the example of the woman that I was sharing about, we sat down and said, what if instead of you having the expectations, right, of, hey, you need to deliver 5 new clients this week? Why don't you sit down and actually tell the person an example, do a training session on how you would go and get the 5 clients, and then have uh, a creative exchange, brainstorming between the two of you. Use that to write a standard operating procedure on how sales are generated within the organization by simply taking a recording or a transcription of that. And then ask this person over the next 7 days to go and use the framework and SOP that you just created and go out and get those 5 clients. And in our next accountability meeting, we're going to go over that together. You see, in that example, I went from, I have the idea and the expectation and only telling the person part of it, because that's what we do, to sitting down and fully leveraging the responsibility, the thinking around it, and the ownership around it. And so that's a simple example of what I'm talking about, of relinquishing the control. And instead of worrying about how it's going to come to fruition or what it's going to look like, and then being disappointed week after week, this is about you as the leader, first and foremost, owning where you're still trying to control instead of getting results, where you're still trying to control things, control people. But more than anything, the control is around this fear of you fully trusting that you can get results through others. That's what all of this is about. And that's the breakthrough that I am excited for you to step into, is instead of thinking about things in this way of being so focused on the micro, right? The results of today and even tomorrow are so micro. You are more in the macro, right? Thinking of things on this bigger scale of your company and your vision and the movement that you have in the world. That vision takes a different application of how you deploy that through the people around you and supporting you. And it's using your time more to infuse creative thinking or outside of the box solutions in collaboration with them than it is to do the work anymore. This next level of you is about you getting comfortable by just being in the vision, and you thinking more about where your energy gets tied up or there's friction around your energy, and resetting the room around that. And then using the amazing people that you have around you to fulfill the vision, fulfill what's possible. And I think what I see a lot of is the women that we work with, feel like they need to be in all of the weeds alongside the people. And I think that that's not your role. That is not the highest and best use. And also, that level of control is what's holding your team back. And so, in the client example that I've shared with you today, one of the things that we're really excited to see unfold, and I'll have to do another episode around it, is what happened after she chose to stop getting in it with them and start leading them. Because when you're in it with them, your presence is so big and your ideas are so large that they just look at you and they sort of are in awe of you. And in that awe of you, they're not in awe of them, right? They're not necessarily uncovering what their magic is. And it's not intentional. As leaders, we love empowering our team. That's what we are doing this for. Seeing people become the best version of themselves, seeing their limitless potential emerge is like what we live for. But we don't always understand how we're contributing to our struggle and their struggle and performance within the organization. And so this level of control, it's super interesting because it's our biggest frustration a lot of times that our teams aren't performing, but we don't necessarily look at how we're contributing to it. So today, inquire. How are you contributing to maybe something that's not working? How are you contributing to someone not necessarily performing in the way that you desire? And it's really interesting because when you ask that different question, not only do you clean up your energy around it, but you can elevate the situation so fast because you get out of the old frequency, the old energy of struggle, and you elevate into your truth, your true essence, which is vision, which is possibility, which is seeing your goals come to fruition. So release the need to control and see how control sneaks up in even the most unexpected circumstances. It sneaks up in just wanting to make sure everyone gets what they're doing. It sneaks into those weekly team meetings when week after week you allow your teams to show up with no results or little results, and you're reporting how much you're doing. That communicates to them that it's okay for you to be not only the leader, but the main contributor while they sit on the sidelines. That's a way, though, that you're still controlling the way that business is generated because you know you can rely on you. You know that at the end of the day, if metrics aren't hit and it's the 25th, you're going to pull through. How can you put that identity aside and focus on empowering your people so that they can pull through, so that they can also fail and then pull through, and they can start to have that reliability and trust within themselves and be empowered to be in that role for your organization. Are you loving SoulCharge? If so, hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and share an episode. We want to bring powerful content to women leaders each week so that women can be unleashed to create the results that they want now. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.